Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
Hey, thanks for being with us on the American Potential podcast. Appreciate you joining us. Again, we're talking about government barriers, government-imposed barriers. A couple of the areas that we talk about a lot on this show are education, K through 12, health, education, and breaking barriers there. But then healthcare. Healthcare is a big one, and we've talked about in the civilian world, sort of the imposed barriers that can be broken by things like, direct primary care or expanding health savings accounts or, getting rid of certificate of need, all these things that we call them the personal option in healthcare. But one of the biggest barriers to healthcare is actually for veterans. And we've talked about this a lot. The Mission Act and that not being fully implemented by the VA and resistance to implementing the Mission Act. And today's podcast guest is just another example of that. Each of us is unique. We're all individuals, which means there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And we talk about this on the show, how we're all individuals and how sometimes government tries to put every solution into a one-size-fits-all box of solutions. And as I said, we see that in education, where government puts kids in zip codes. And when it comes to healthcare, this is especially true. And when Congress directed the Department of Veterans Affairs to authorize community care through the Mission Act, veterans received more options. Good for veterans. The law allowed veterans to seek care outside of the one-size-fits-all VA healthcare system. It allowed veterans to seek the care they deem to be the best, not the care that the government thinks is best for them. This is empowering individuals to own their own healthcare choices and make those without the government imposing a one-size-fits-all approach. But what if the system that's supposed to allow for more options doesn't inform you about those options? Today's guest is an Army veteran who was hit by shrapnel and sustained a foot injury while serving. Because he's stubborn, and we'll talk about him about being stubborn, and he didn't receive care for 5 months, he injured himself even further. And during his treatment, the Department of Veterans Affairs never told him that community care was an option, despite the Mission Act. And he finally had to demand it when a friend told him about this option. Chris Enget is our guest today. Chris is a friend of mine. Hey, Chris, thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, Chris is from Montana, from Billings, Montana, right, Chris?
That is correct. The great state of Montana, the big sky country.
Yeah, we were just talking about all the snow you've gotten. It's been dumping snow on you this year, and I guess that's good from a water perspective, but you're ready for it to be nice weather, right?
Yes. I'm ready for summer to finally be here and be outside in the sun and not have to worry about the cold anymore.
All right. Now, I was also, Monica told me that you growing up, your grandfather owned an apiary. I've never even heard of an apiary. So, that's how unknowledgeable I am on this. But that's a collection of beehives, as I understand it. And you spent a lot of summers working with your grandfather and farming bees. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, we'd work out in the bee yards every year. He'd move the beehives around to different locations based on where crops were. And then at the end of the summer, we would take all the hives and extract the honey before he shipped all of his bees down to California to pollinate in the orchards.
So I assume you have at least one horror story out of that, right? Or do the bees they're just perfect gentlemen? They never bothered you, or what?
No, they definitely can get riled up. there's little smokers that you use to calm the bees down.
Yes.
And one time my brother and I were out in the bee yards with my grandfather, and he didn't use the smoker quite long enough, and the bees got angry when he opened up the hive, and he told my brother and I to not come over to the beehives because the bees are mad. And my brother dropped the sticks he had in his hands and ran straight through the bees and tried to jump in the truck, but he's trying to swing at the bees at the same time and couldn't get the truck door open. And I'm laughing. And finally, my grandfather tells me to go help him get in the truck. And I get in the truck and I'm swatting bees, and I look over, and he was swinging so wildly, he hit himself in the face and gave himself a bloody nose. And I about died. It was probably one of the funniest things that I ever saw.
So no bee stings, just a bloody nose?
Oh, no, he got a lot of bee stings.
Oh, he got a lot of bee stings, too. Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah, he wasn't wearing a veil or a suit or anything, and so, he got a lot of bee stings.
Oh, he did. You guys were doing all this without any suits on?
Yeah, normally if you can get the bees calmed down, you don't really have to put the suit on, and if anything, we'd put a veil on just so we don't get stung in the face. But the majority of the time, if you're just kind of checking the hives out and making sure there's no bacteria or fungus or anything in the hives, they don't get too angry at you, and you can just do what you need to do and move on to the next bee yard.
Yeah. So did this? I'm interested in the answer to this question. So did this change your brother's desire to interact with bees in the future after that happened, or was he still the same?
No, it definitely changed. He never came to extract with us again. So, so he was tired of working with bees after that.
Yeah. Well, someday I'll tell it on this podcast. I'll tell the story of my brother and I. We were out hunting one time, and I saw a rattlesnake, and I'm totally freaked by it. I hate rattlesnakes, and I'll tell the story another time, but it changed my perception and my view, and I never, I was never the same again. So I imagine the same is true of your brother. But anyway,
correct.
Tell us a little bit about your military service. First of all, thank you for your service to our country, and but I would love to hear a little bit about your service.
Yeah, so I joined the Army in 2005 when I was 17 years old. A lot of people join the service because they feel that calling to something higher, or they want the college benefits, and they want to use those to get themselves into a good college. I didn't have the best childhood, and it was my ticket out. And so I joined the Army at 17 years old, did split op training, which means I'd go to basic training between my junior and senior year, come back and finish my senior year, and then go to my advanced individual training, or AIT, and then join whatever unit I was supposed to join. And so I joined the Army as a 13 Bravo, which is cannon crew member, so I was artillery. And after about a year and a half, artillery is not very conducive to urban warfare. So they transitioned our unit to combat support military police. And so we learned to train the Afghan police and the Afghan Army. But in 2007, I got hired as a master trainer for the Montana Army National Guard Honor Guard program. And so I built a training program in the state of Montana for military funeral honors, was trained by the 3rd Infantry Division out of Arlington, and helped build the program across the state of Montana to ensure that we were giving military honors to all veterans that pass away, whether they're in the service or not in the service. But they just get that same level of professionalism as they're being interred. And so I did that until 2012 when I deployed to Afghanistan. And I deployed to Afghanistan and started my MOB training, mobilization training, in March of 2012. And in June 20th of 2012, I landed in Afghanistan in Kandahar. And on June 26th, I was injured when an RPG detonated 5 feet from where I was asleep. And 2012 was when the height of the surge was starting to be reduced, and they were trying to bring as many troops home as they could. So if I went to Germany, I wouldn't be allowed to come back to my soldiers in my unit. And so I decided I was going to stay over for as long as I possibly could. And I stayed over for the next 5 months, just tearing myself up, because I wouldn't go and get the treatment that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 months after, I finally didn't really have a choice, had to come home. I was just too broken to keep going. And came home, got through demobilization training at Fort Bliss, Texas, and back to Montana, where I got connected with the Department of Veteran Affairs to try to get some of these physical issues taken care of. And that just started a whole long train of effects that still affects me today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, did you finally decide to get treatment, or did the Army tell you to go get treatment?
No, the Army told me to go get treatment. So I didn't get out of the military until 2017. Mm-hmm. And the hope was that I could get fixed and be able to stay in and keep my career going. Mm-hmm. And in 2017, I'd been in for almost 12 years. And so I really wanted to try to keep going and at least get to 20 years and be able to retire with a 20-year career.
Right. Let me ask you, I mean, let's talk about the injury to your foot. What happened? I mean, what damage was done to your foot?
Yeah, so when the shrapnel entered my left foot, it tore a bunch of stuff. One of the first things the VA found was that the plantar tendon in the bottom of my left foot had completely severed. And so I was walking around without that tendon actually attached, which caused all three arches in your foot to collapse. And it was extremely painful to put any weight on it and to walk. And there in country, they tried to remove as much of the shrapnel as they could. They just couldn't get it all.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you continuing to not get that treatment caused more damage, really, to the foot, right? I mean, if you'd been able to get that treatment immediately, it probably would have put you in a better position.
Absolutely. But you have this mindset when you're in the military that one of the things that I like to always go back to is what's called the warrior ethos. Mm-hmm. Is I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. And those are something that I truly wanted to embody, and I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to quit. We had a mission that we trained for, and all of my guys were going to still be over there doing it, and I didn't want to leave them. I wanted to keep that mission alive. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so you went back and started, when you got back home, you started getting care. But did you know at the time that this community care was an option or not?
I didn't. Now, at the time when I first came home, because I was a Purple Heart recipient, I qualified for a program prior to the Mission Act that was called Veteran's Choice. Mm-hmm. And but I was never explained what that meant and what that looked like. I got in the mail this little card that said Veteran's Choice, and this was my card. But nobody ever explained to me exactly what that meant. And my provider, I guess most people would hope when they go to the doctor that their doctor would have their best interest in mind. And if that meant that I needed to get care somewhere outside of the VA, that would have been the decision. So I just kind of took it at face value that they were trying to do what was best for me. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't realize there was any other thing. I didn't know what the Veterans Choice Program actually meant and what it entailed. And it wasn't until, the Mission Act was passed in 2018. And at that point, I was still receiving care and still trying to get this stuff fixed. Mm-hmm. It still wasn't at the point where I could even walk without a cane. I still had to walk with a device. Yeah.
Is that a common, people in the military, you're part of that team and you expect that people above you and below you will do their job and that you're all part of that team. Does that lead to problems in this expectation that the VA is going to take care of you? Because I think a lot of veterans probably come out thinking, well, of course they're going to take care of me. That's what we do. We take care of one another in the military. Is that a problem?
I absolutely believe it is a problem. Yeah. If you believe that that's what they're going to do, then you're not going to try to seek anything else or care outside of the VA because you just believe that they're going to take care of you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just thinking through this, that question kind of came to mind that there is that ethos, that sort of belief that they're going to do what's right by you because you feel like they have, in the past. So maybe veterans aren't as open to searching for other options because of that, and maybe that's part of the transition coming out of the military, right? Too, is now you want now you want choice. Now you want these decisions rather than them saying, nope, you're going to go to this doctor and you're going to do this. And that's where we're sending you. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and when you're in the military, if you need something from supply and you put your request in, or you need something from admin and you put your request in for whatever it is, it tends to get taken care of, and you get what you need. And you don't have to advocate and fight to get what you need. You get what you need because that's their job to provide that for you. And you expect that the VA is going to do the same thing when you put your request in for an appointment, that you're just going to get the best available care and the best available appointments you can get. And if you don't realize that you can get that appointment and that care outside of the VA, it's not something you can advocate for.
Right. Well, now, so to continue with your story, because of you went in, had a surgery to repair your foot, and it was, I guess, a botched surgery, but you were put on multiple drugs. And what did this, I mean, maybe you can explain that. And what did this do to your mental state?
Yeah, that's a big issue with not just me, but many veterans, that the VA just wants to try to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And we see it all across the country where veterans like me go in for something, and instead of trying to get to the core and the root of the problem, they like to put you on different prescriptions and different drugs to try to mask the symptoms and get rid of the symptoms of the problem. Mm-hmm. And so my first surgery was to go in and repair that plantar tendon that had been severed. And when I woke up, they didn't even repair the tendon, but they removed 3 joints out of my foot. And still to this day, I have no idea why.
And this was done at a VA facility.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, over the next several years, I had multiple other surgeries just to repair the damage that stemmed from that first surgery. My mental health definitely started to decline. I'm under 30 years old at this time, and if this is my future for the rest of my life, there's not very much hope in that. If nothing's going to get better and nothing is working, and you have to fight every single day for any amount of care, yeah, your mental health will absolutely deteriorate no matter who you are, veteran or not.
Sure.
And so we see that across the board with veterans, and I saw it firsthand that if my reality for the next 40, 50, 60 years is staying home, hopped up on drugs, and no hope of a better future, suicidal ideations become a reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and you're a young guy, right? Being able to go out and physically do things and stuff. I mean, you're thinking of this, man. I mean, I don't know if life's ever going to get any better, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So, what, as you're looking back on it, what would you have done? Like if you had known about the option of going somewhere else, that you could go outside into the community and get care, you probably would have done that, right? You didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have fought to try to get that care outside of the VA with somebody else, and it very easily could have prevented my suicide attempts. I attempted suicide 2 different times, and it absolutely would have prevented those if I had that little spark of hope that maybe it could get better. Yeah.
Well, you're doing much better. I mean, I know you personally. You're doing much better now, and I'm glad to hear that. And you have a mission. We're going to talk about that, the things that you're doing in your life, but we still have a lot more to go with your story. When you finally asked for community care for counseling, what happened?
Well, so let's back up just a little bit, because when I first went to the VA, it was right after my first suicide attempt. I went to the VA and told them, obviously, what I'm trying to do isn't working, and I need to see a counselor. I need to see somebody to try to figure this out. And they told me that I wouldn't be able to see a counselor for 3 months. And I had to be point blank with them that if I had to wait three more months, I wasn't going to be here in 3 months. Mm-hmm. And so they finally got me in to see somebody the next day. And through that process, I ended up seeing 6 different counselors. And every time you get a new counselor, you start the process all over again. There's no continuity of care. And that person just doesn't know who you are. They may be able to read the notes, but they don't understand the nuance of your life. Mm-hmm. And so when you have to keep restarting over and over and over again, there's no hope in that. And I had a friend who finally said, "Hey, I see this counselor outside of the VA, and the Mission Act allows me to see him. Maybe you should look into that." And again, you still have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that authorization for that care, which you shouldn't. But I ended up having to go to my provider at the VA, have them send in a referral for mental health, then go to the mental health provider and talk to them about why I want to see this person, and then hopefully they authorize it and give me the authorization to see him. And I pretty much told him, like, I'll do those 2 appointments, but I'm not doing anything else. I've already jumped through all the hoops. Mm-hmm. This is the person I want to see and who I want to talk to. And I was able to advocate for myself because I had a friend who was there to give me the information mm-hmm. that I needed.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part, Chris, is, the VA, if they care about veterans, if the system, again, there's good people at the VA, but the system itself is what I'm talking about here. If it cares about veterans, it's going to let you know that because it wants you to get the best care. But they didn't do that, right? They failed you in that in that regard. The only reason you knew this is because that you had a friend who came to you and said, "Hey, you might look at this as an option," right?
Right. Well, and I think like General Omar Bradley put it pretty succinctly when he said, "We are dealing with veterans, not procedures, with our problems or with their problems, not ours." Mm-hmm. And looking at it from that perspective, we need to be focused on the veteran and their health care and not the system and not the bureaucracy. And it seemed like it's been flipped where the system and the bureaucracy is more important than the veteran and their health care.
Yeah. Now, you were also getting physical therapy, but it was not this is incredible. It wasn't at the VA facility closest to you. How far away were you, and how far did you have to travel to the closest option that they gave you at the VA for physical therapy?
Yeah, the closest option they gave me was Salt Lake City, which is a 9-hour drive one way.
That's
and they had me doing that. Yeah, they had me doing that for 7 months. And if you mess up anything on your paperwork when you're requesting reimbursement for travel or anything like that, they will deny the claim and not tell you that it's denied.
Yeah.
And so I traveled to Salt Lake City 7 times before I realized all 7 of my travel claims had been denied. So I had to travel 2 states away to get physical therapy care and not be reimbursed for any of it. I had to do it on my own dime.
And how often were you doing the physical therapy at this point? What was the frequency?
I was driving there once a week.
9 hours?
Correct.
I mean, I don't know any other way of saying it, but that's immoral to do this to veterans. I mean, I'm off script here a little bit in saying this, not that we have a script, but it's just immoral to think that that's okay to do that to a veteran when you had facilities that could do the same physical therapy like right by you, right? It's probably within minutes or hour.
Yeah, within 15 minutes of where I live, there's a physical therapist that could have absolutely done it.
Yeah, but
that
government
back then.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that was a problem even back then. But even today, I mean, I have a gentleman in Montana that they had him drive from Kalispell to Billings, Montana for an eye appointment, which is almost 8-hour drive for an eye appointment. And he's a World War II veteran, and they had him driving across the state to get an eye appointment, which is just incredible to me.
Yeah, that is incredible. And again, these are veterans, folks. If you're listening to this, these are veterans. These are people who answered the call, went over and served their country to defend our freedom, our liberty, and this is how we're treating them. This should not stand. And of course, this is why the Mission Act was passed. It's why it was signed into law by President Trump at the time, and why the Congress passed it. But we've got people there who are just deciding that it's more important to save the system and the VA healthcare system so that they can keep getting, they can keep getting paychecks. This is not right, folks. Chris, your VA orthopedic surgeon had to fight for a year and a half. And this is where I talk about there are good people in the VA system. And this is an example. Your VA orthopedic surgeon had to fight for a year and a half to get approval for your 4th surgery that finally repaired your foot. Why did it take so long to get that surgery approved?
Yeah, one of the things that we saw come out of the VA is that they've put this board in between the provider and the decision that's actually made between the care that they can provide to their patients. And so when he put his request in for this final surgery, it was denied over and over and over again, and he just knew that was not going to be acceptable. This is the surgery that we needed to do, and he finally, after a year and a half, and I'm not sure what the exact reason why they finally approved it, whether it was just to get him to stop requesting it or to get him off their back or what the deal was. But he absolutely fought tooth and nail to try to get this surgery approved. And you know me, I walk without a device now. I don't have a cane or a walker anymore.
Right.
So it obviously worked. But there's a lot of doctors within the VA and providers that after a while, they don't want to keep fighting just to provide that level of care for their patients that they know is right. And that's why I believe that we see such a high turnover rate in the VA, is that providers are leaving because they don't get to do what they're trained to do.
The good doctors leave, the ones that just get a paycheck and that they're there for the paycheck stay. That's the problem with any bureaucracy, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I mean, I guess I would put this to anyone listening to this. If you're a veteran, you go out, you serve your country, you fight, you're injured, you're injured in the way that Chris has been injured, and then you're just trying to get care. And it takes them a year and a half to get approval within a system for you to go and get the fourth surgery on your foot. And you know that that's what the doctors are telling you need to have that will fix it. I mean, I can understand veterans' complete frustration and almost despair at being treated this way by a system that we should not tolerate this kind of a system. It's really, really frustrating. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely believe. And when you have the VA and their suicide report of 16.7 a day, or most people have heard of 22 a day, or America's Warrior Partnership and their study that they came out with that said it's probably closer to 44 veterans a day that are committing suicide. It's just showing me that there is zero hope within the veteran community that they're going to get taken care of. These problems that they incurred because of their military service, because they signed on that dotted line, they're not getting taken care of and they're not getting fixed. And there's no hope moving forward. That's why we're seeing these numbers. And we can argue all day long which one of those studies is correct and accurate. But I think you and I can both agree that one veteran a day is too many.
Yeah. Well, and again, I guess I would just ask, in the world that we live in, and I think of the amazing technology that we have in the medical community, the things, I mean, your forced surgery is a great example of that, right? The answers are out there. The only thing that's preventing people from getting care in a lot of cases is it's not access to it. It's the decision, whether it's an insurance company denying a coverage or a treatment of some kind, or whether it's a bureaucracy like the Veterans Administration. It's unjust. It's immoral to do this when the answer is right there. It is right there. These problems, these medical problems can be fixed. And how frustrating it is when the system that you trusted, that you signed up and said, hey, I'll go fight for my country, and you're a part of this team, whether it's the Army, the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, whatever it is, and you sign up to be on that team, and then at the end of it, it's like you're left on the battlefield. You're deserted. That's how many of these veterans feel. It's just
absolutely. And that the last part of the warrior ethos that I left out was never leave a fallen comrade.
Right.
And that's something that a lot of veterans, and that's why you see so many nonprofit veteran organizations start up, is because they know so many veterans are being left behind, and they want to stop it. They want to pick those brothers and sisters back up and say, no, there's hope. There's still things we can do to get this on the right track.
Yeah. And after your forced surgery, you woke up, you were in the worst pain of your life. After some unfortunate events, you needed to be sedated again. Why did it take 2 hours for them to be able to treat the extreme pain that you were in?
So when I woke up from that last surgery, the nerve block didn't work. And that's not a VA issue. That's something that can happen anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the amount of prescriptions that I was on already and the high levels of narcotics that I was already on, the dosage of pain relief that they would have to give me right then and there to make sure I could get that pain relief was going to be a high level of narcotics right off the bat. And so when the nurse walked in and asked what my pain level was, I very colorfully explained what that pain was like. And she got a shot of Dilaudid and a shot of fentanyl and gave both of those to me and walked out of the room. And another nurse had to have passed her on the way in the room and asked me what my pain level was. And now I'm even more frustrated because I'm still trying to wake up. I don't know what's going on. I know I'm still in a ton of pain. And she asked what my pain level was. And so I, again, explained what my pain level was. And so she got another shot of Dilaudid and another shot of fentanyl and gave me another cocktail right back to back, all within 3 minutes. And they overdosed me on fentanyl.
Oh,
and so they had to get Narcan to give me that and to make sure that I wouldn't stay in that overdose state and die from it. And Narcan counteracts the side effects of any pain medication whatsoever. But they didn't have any prior authorizations to use more anesthesia to put me back out. So they left me laying in that hospital bed for 2 hours, waiting for the Narcan to wear off before they could give me something else.
Wow. That's incredible, Chris. I mean, it's amazing and it's so frustrating. And I just don't know why would we ever tolerate this? I mean, it's kind of a hidden thing that unless you're a veteran, you don't see it and you're not up close to it. But the American people ought to demand change here. And of course, the Mission Act was changed and it's still taking time to change the bureaucracy, but more change is needed. More reform is needed, in my view. Are you still getting treated with the VA system or are you going to community care?
No, I actually currently use my private health insurance for all of my care. The level of anxiety that I get just walking into a VA care facility for my own personal care is so great that I just don't want to go back to those facilities for myself. And honestly, at this point, even if I didn't have private healthcare insurance, I would probably go into debt to get healthcare on my own instead of going to a VA facility. But I think you're absolutely right that we got to keep fighting for these reforms, and that's what I love about working with Concerned Veterans for America is that we're not going to give the fight up, and why we're going to continue to fight to codify those access standards that the Mission Act put into place to ensure that stuff can't be circumvented anymore.
Yeah, and that's really important that we continue to do it. I mean, I do make the comparison right between the whole school choice and educational freedom issue and this VA healthcare system, because again, if we care about kids, we'll build a system around them and around the education that they get. If we care about our veterans, we'll build a system that cares about our veterans and puts them first. And it's just that simple. And I think we have lived with the VA, and particularly before the Mission Act passed, we lived with a VA that said, nope, this is the care you get, whether you like it or not. And that is not the kind of system that we should have in a free society that believes in free markets and competitiveness. That we should do that. In fact, that would be a system that's going to drive up costs, right? So it's crazy that we've done this to our veterans. And I hope that the American people hear this story, hear others like it, and act and call their members of Congress to make sure that these VA facilities are doing everything they can to improve access to care, to make sure that they are telling veterans about community care options and other things that are out there, and just provide this care. I mean, people are tired of hearing the excuses of it. So, Chris, what else? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you're absolutely correct that when we have more choice and we have more options, that there are, because none of us are the same and none of our healthcare needs are going to be 100% alike. When you have those options for a veteran to choose what is going to be the best care for them, whether it's physical care or mental health care, we're going to see a transformation within the veteran community. And I like to use the example of acupuncture because I have a lot of friends that have had great success using acupuncture. And the VA just recently actually started authorizing acupuncture care within care in the community. But ironically, I'm scared of needles, ironically, because I have a bunch of tattoos. But I know that acupuncture is not going to be something that works for me. I'm going to have anxiety over it, and it's just not going to be that stress relief that I would need. But knowing that it's an option for some veterans that it is going to help is what the benefit is. And if we can do that with all care and give those options to veterans to choose what's going to be best for them. Because if I'm locked into a box that acupuncture is the only thing that's going to help me, I know it's not going to help. And that's what we've done with the VA currently, is that veterans are being locked into this box of healthcare, saying this is the only treatment that you can have or the only treatment that's going to work. And they know it's not going to work for them because they know themselves and they know their body the best. And we need to give them those options and those choices to choose what is best for them.
So what can people do? If people are listening to this, what can they do? Where's the best place for them to go get more information, either on community care, what their options are there, or how can they get involved with Concerned Veterans for America?
Yeah, the best thing for them to do is to go to our website, cv4a.org. Again, that is cv4a.org. And click the button that says Take Action, and they can read all about the different initiatives that we have, and they can sign letters to their legislators, and they can get connected to our staff on the ground in those states to be able to start volunteering with us and working alongside us to make sure that these reforms actually become a reality. Yeah,
and that's really important, and I'm glad that, and you do a great job of it, Chris. I'm glad that you're able to take what you did in the military and all the pain and the agony of going, number one, through the injury, but then having to deal with all this nonsense at the VA and turning that into something positive, right? Where you're able to help other veterans who maybe find themselves in a similar situation. So I'm glad you're able to do that. And thanks for all the good work you're doing there as well.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I definitely appreciate it. It's definitely become my passion because I know that there is hope out there, and I want to make sure that other veterans get to feel some of that hope as well when they're feeling hopeless. Because I've been in that boat, and I know what it's like to feel like nothing's ever going to improve, and that it's never going to get better, and this is going to be where I am for the rest of my life. I know what that feels like, and being on the other side of it, I know that there is absolutely hope, and I just want to make sure that our brothers and sisters know that it's there and that it's available, and what they can do to best advocate for themselves and advocate for their brothers and sisters that deserve it just as much as they do. Yeah, that's right. And that's what this is all about. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Hey, I was thinking during this interview, most people who don't know you don't know this, but you have a big beard, right? I do, big yes. Long beard. I wondered if there's still some bees in that from like that when you and your brother, you think there's still a couple bees living in there? They went over to Afghanistan with you. They served their country as well, came back. What do you think? Is that possible? Well, I'm not sure if there's bees in there, but I would say that there's probably some beeswax still in there. So okay. That sounds good. All right, Chris. Hey, thanks for joining me. I do appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate the opportunity. All right. Well, listen, great. What a tragic story that Chris tells, but it's just one of a million. It's one of millions of stories that are out there. He's willing to tell it. Think of all the veterans who are unwilling to step up and tell this story. They just accept the care that the VA gives them, and they think that that's as good as it gets. And the VA should be ashamed of itself for not taking this Mission Act and embracing it in all of its forms and making sure that every veteran knows this is their opportunity and this is their chance to get the kind of care that they deserve, because they went when our country needed them. They went and they answered the call. And it is imperative that we keep the pressure on. And so I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, to go to cv4a.org and make sure that you get involved, you get engaged, and you keep the pressure on the Veterans Administration. And we have to do that, hold them accountable to this as well. Well, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook and YouTube, American Potential Podcast. Always looking for great stories like this. You can go to our website, AmericanPotential.com. You can share your story there by going to the Share Your Story section, filling that out, and we may tell your story right here on the podcast as well. Thanks for listening to this week's episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.